Well, if you're going to record your 400th podcast, this isn't a bad match to be wrapping. It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me this week is someone coming to us from the Royal County of Meath. He's earning his 65th Harpin cap. Welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Evening, Jeff. Evening, Cian. Good to be back.
Good to have you, Tom. And also with us is someone whose algorithmic artistry has him the current runaway leader in our Harpin Super Brew Prediction League. He's making appearance number 38. Hello to Rugby Kino himself, Kino Muller.
Thanks for having me back, Jeff. You know, the statistical analysis, it's just so beautiful.
This is it. It seems to be working all right for now. We'll say. No, seriously. This is actually our 400th episode of our humble podcast. So we should probably do something special for it. But I actually think our feature match of this week is special enough in its own right. So why don't we just crack on with harping on it? It was, of course, La Rochelle v Leinster in round 3 of the 24-25 Investec Rugby Champions Cup. It was played at the Stade Marcel des Flandres on Sunday, January the 12th. Seemed a grand afternoon in La Rochelle in front of a sellout crowd as Hastoy got the match underway, Tom.
Yeah, and look, it was one of the big billing games at the weekend. I know Toulouse and Sharks had a lot of interest, but it was the only sold out Heineken Cup game of the weekend. Whatever, La Rochelle's 755th or whatever it is, sellout game. But it's always difficult down there, and we sort of knew early on what sort of a contest it was going to be. I think from the get-go, I think it was Bourgeois sort of welcomed Jordi Barrett to the Heineken Cup. You know, it's not Super Rugby anymore. He sort of got him on a good hit from the start from Hastoy. But then Jordi, in fairness, and quickly said, "Well, look, welcome to Jordi Barrett," because there was a little bit of a kicking match with himself and Doolan, and he ended up putting the La Rochelle back under their own, just in front of their own posts. And it was a sign of what was sort of going to happen today. This, for me, was a battle of sort of kicking and exit and defence. And I think Leinster probably definitely won the defensive battle, and I think and probably marginally shaded the kicking battle. Doolan is an excellent kicker, but he tends to go for more diagonals and tries to go for the sideline. Obviously, more comfortable to try and go after the slightly nervous Leinster lineout. So I get the rationale why, but with Barrett and with Jamie Osborne, we were going for length and trying to turn the La Rochelle back three. But yeah, the other thing I noticed in the sort of first sort of 15-10 minutes was we were picking our targets with double hits, depending who was the ball carrier. Some players we weren't double hitting. We obviously know the key guys within the La Rochelle carrying game, and it was double hits were going in where, you know, you're going low and going high, so make sure that La Rochelle player wasn't able to get an offload away. So you were killing the momentum, and I think for me that was a sign of the first half as well. Obviously, I'll talk slightly later on about that whole defensive stand from about sort of 15 minutes onwards. And if people look back on the game, they'll see that La Rochelle were continuously creeping backwards with the ball, and a lot of that was to do with Leinster targeting certain ball carriers and then been able to pick off, call it the lesser ball carriers. Not that there's not many of them in that La Rochelle team. They're all quite decent ball carriers, but there's some better than others. And but it wasn't like they were being driven back miles. But after 4 or 5 phases, they'd find themselves back 4 or 5 meters. And that tactic earlier on, especially up front by James Ryan, Caelan Doris, especially. Doris is great for that second guy in going with the hit. You know, you get the big guys like Joe Mack, or James Ryan or Porter when he came on, or Ronan Kelleher going low down around the waist, nice low level, and Doris comes in and he's just able to wrap up. He's this, So I heard on another podcast that it was listening to. It's always nice to listen to podcasts in the morning when your team wins the European Cup. So
What other podcasts?
yeah, well, the
Embarrassing me.
rank 2 and 3, and some of the some Southern Hemisphere ones that are ahead of us. Um, and they were sort of crediting him with the Richie McCaw cloak of invisibility, which is probably the ultimate compliment. Because he has this knack of when he comes in, Doris is a sort of second tackler. He tends to spin his body around on the how would you call it, on the La Rochelle side of what becomes a tackle, and he just nice and slowly gets out of that position, and it just does enough to kill the momentum, and it allows the defense to sort of reset and pick off the next ball carrier. I thought La Rochelle were guilty of a lot of one out runners as well. They'll look at it and go, how could we break down this Leinster defense? And the Leinster defense was superb for that first half. But some of the time, after Leinster double teamed their stronger ball carriers, it was easier to pick off the one out guys, and La Rochelle became a little bit predictable. I know they've had some good attack and play at several stages throughout the game, but when they got into the red zone, they sort of resorted to type, carrying, going out one, and this Leinster defence wasn't going to give up that. And as I said, the fact that we were driving them back a metre at a time or half a metre, it was just increments, and they find themselves closer to the 22 line, to the try line. It must have been very frustrating. And then obviously Leinster would pick their opportune time to try and get a turnover and get exits. But yeah, look, they scored earlier on. We were caught offside after a crossfield kick, and it was an easy 3 points for La Rochelle to get on the scoreboard, and hostile duly applied the 3 points over the bar. Again, there was some more kicking duels. Leinster seemed happy to play off ball, is this the fancy term for saying you don't want the ball, um, and so they give it to La Rochelle to say you come back and try and break us down. We weren't really going to take a whole lot of chances in our own half, and as I said, we used those sort of Barish who would come on late, and there was a rejigging of that back line. I know Tommy O'Brien failed his captain's run, and that changed a few positions, and I'm sure it slightly upset what Leinster might have wanted to do in the back line, and we've had to make a few positional changes, and there probably was a further knock on of that in the second half. When we had to when I think it was Jimmy O'Brien went off, I think it was Jimmy O'Brien, we had to rejig the back line a bit more as well. Frawley had to go to full back as well, so we didn't quite get the cohesion just with the change with Tommy, and then second half change. Not that our attack was fully cohesive anyway at times, but we just didn't get quite the flow, and the substitutions as well just sort of hindered what we were trying to do. Other highlights of that sort of first half, there was sort of a half break by Noel, who sort of was his best game I've seen him play for La Rochelle. I thought he was a sort of a semi-threat all day, but it was snaffled out by Osborne. And then there was a series of plays where the ball eventually got into the La Rochelle half, and Bryce Doolan, who's a classy 15 in fairness, he's continuously good. But he actually, as an interested Leinster fan, I looked at the Toulouse game last week, and he did the exact same thing, but on an attacking situation where he sort of fly hacked for some reason at in the against the Toulouse reserves. And I don't know what he was doing or what he was thinking. I don't know if he was afraid of the impact, but he sort of did the same again, but this was in defence. He sort of fly hacked out of defence, and one of the La Rochelle players, I forget which one, was ahead of the ball and caught it, and it was just a simple offside penalty, and it was a nice sort of semi-centre of the post for Sam to get the ball rolling on the scoreboard for us. A bit of a strange one by Doolan, who's normally foot perfect with anything to do with full back play. Shortly after that, they restarted, and Sam was charged down. I suppose the lesson for Sam, because he got 2 charge downs in this game, I suppose the lesson for Sam is he's not. There's an old saying down the country, if it's not junior hurling anymore, and having that time to lazily bring your foot back to hit a 60 meter spiral, which we knows he has the ability of, but this is near test rugby quality of play, and the defences are a lot quicker and a lot sharper. So look, I'm quite happy Sam will tweak that a bit and be able to pull the trigger on those long kicks. But yeah, he got charged down, and eventually Osborne, he threw it out to Osborne on the wing. He recovered it well. He threw it out to Osborne at the wing, and we used Osborne as an exit. And it sort of, he was under pressure though, because he was right over the sideline and went back to Doolan. Doolan regathered his own kick inside. And that mistake by Sam, even though it wasn't minor, and we did get the exit, but it was the start of a period of continuous pressure on our defence inside the 22 for a good 10 or 12 minutes. Um, and without repeating myself, obviously what happened in that period of time, we did give away a few penalties during that time. Cian Healy was pinged, I think, for not rolling away, and there was another little scrum penalty. La Rochelle obviously kept going to the line and trying to maul it down, and then go from their attack there. But I think if La Rochelle, two things, if La Rochelle are looking back at this game, I think they'll be slightly disappointed with the sort of series of one out runners. Um, and as I said from the get go, Leinster's ability to just double tackle, especially Caelan Doris, as that second guy in, they're big ball carriers and continuously put La Rochelle on the back foot. And it's only really when you look back on that sort of 10 or 12 minutes of extended period of time in that game, just how good that defense was. You know, as I said, I was listening to other podcasts, even though they don't exist, Jeff. Um, you know, strangely bemoaning the Leinster performance, which I'll touch on at the end of the game in the final comments, which I found interesting. But the same people, I presume, realised which the way to beat Leinster the last few years is deny them the ball, and then you put pressure on them, and eventually you eventually score. And we've bemoaned the fact that in Marseille or in Dublin where La Rochelle starved us of the ball. Well, La Rochelle had plenty of ball. I think it was nearly 60% territory in possession in that first half. But they did very, very little with it. So, I don't know what that old saying is about you keep making the same mistakes and hoping the outcome will be different. Well, we have to do something slightly different. We've fallen short over the last few years, and we've added a real strong edge to defence. I know we've spoken about it in the pod several times. The first now 12 games of the season, and Nienbar's first season last season, as that sort of developed. There's a really hard edge to that defence, and I also think people forget that you're in the south, well, at least the west of France, if we want to be pedantic, and in a sort of rabid home crowd, 15, 16,000, against probably, if you were to rank them in today, the third best team in Europe, you're going to be under pressure at times, and they're a physical team, and to be able to hold them out fairly comfortably is probably a stretch, but just the pure aggressiveness of Leinster's defence really minimised La Rochelle's. There wasn't a whole lot of chances they had. Every time they went one out, they were driven back, and several times they got close to 5, 6, 7 meters out and ended up 15, 16 meters out. It was just really outstanding defence, and just to continuously put your body on the line. But that's systems as well. That's not just all heart. It's very easy to just wipe the slate with that and go, that's all heart, that's all just bravery. It's all South African grit of getting stuck in and putting your body on the line. That's real good systems defense where you're targeting double tackling certain guys, going after the single runners, isolating them, and taking your chance. And yeah, it fitness as well. What I mean, that doesn't all come around by accident. You know what I mean? That's savage work to get that sort of defensive set going up. And it was, La Rochelle would have been gutted with that. I guarantee you, maybe besides Toulouse, in the whole of Europe, and definitely they would have been scoring tries at least a couple of things. So there's only one or two teams in the whole of Europe would have held them out there, and we're one of them. Forget about all the other teams. If that was Glasgow, it doesn't matter. Certain pretenders, and if they're coming up the ranks and they're there to prove themselves, they wouldn't have sustained that pressure from La Rochelle. La Rochelle have showed their quality in the first part of that competition away to Bath and stuff like that. So, they're still a very, very good team. But yeah, absolutely outstanding defence. We still had some issues with our line out throughout the game. La Rochelle did go after us. As I said, Doolan was happy to find the line a few times. Obviously interesting now in January, there's a couple of new laws about the 30-second line out. I don't know if it was fully implemented all of the time in this game. And then probably the most interesting one that semi-suited La Rochelle more than us, I think, was the scrum half not being able to come up the side of the scrum like we traditionally see and put pressure on the 9. Aldrich was able to get good front foot ball off, a good few scrums for La Rochelle when they got the ball out. But again, the phase after that, they were a bit snaffled up and driven back. Leinster didn't quite get the same front foot ball off our scrums. Um, I suppose the next part of the game was uh, we went for a bit of a weird three-man line out. Um, Again, trying to secure ball. But we eventually, when the ball got out to sort of 30, 40 meters out, we infringed for not rolling away, and it was a simple enough penalty to give away, and Hastoi made it 6-3. Um, but I suppose considering the pressure we were under and the sustained defence, it wasn't a bad outcome after that period of time. Um, After we sort of after they got the penalty from the restart, or after we got the restart away, we actually got some good territory for the next sort of from the 28 sort of 27 minutes after that sustained pressure. We got into their half, and it's funny, Leinster seemed to go really aggressive on their defence in both 22s. On when La Rochelle had the ball in our 22, and when they're in their 22, we really hunt them down to put pressure on that middle section. We're quite happy to kick and see how it plays, but the speed of what Leinster's defence does when La Rochelle got into their 22, like La Rochelle were scrambling to get out, scrambling to go left, scrambling to go right, getting hit, loads of flood runners, attacks, defenders, I should say, coming through into the passing lines. And La Rochelle, a couple of times they really had to go near the edge to try and get round, but a lot of the times it ended up in Doolan kicking maybe 30 meters out for a line out. So yeah, noticeably inside both 22s, Leinster's pace of defence just really ramps up the aggressiveness, really getting in their face in the back line. Um, yeah, Sam had another bit of a charge, and I mentioned he had first one. But from the charge on La Rochelle had a bit of a high tackle, and it was a penalty to us. And we decided to go from there towards a line out, probably 30 meters out. And it's funny with all the line out woes, it's amazing the trust players still have in their own belief, their own system. They're going to go, even though you would think the obvious thing there would go to two and secure possession, but no, Leinster went for a sort of pre-plan move. Kelleher threw a long ball over the 15. Robbie Henshaw took it on at great pace. Harley broke stride and made decent yards inside. Um, a ruck was formed as often. Gibson Park always looks to go blind first. There's an old move in rugby called the 11. It's where you go one to the open, one to the blind. This was sort of a reverse. It was one to the blind, which Gibson Park favors a lot. That's the blind side of the pitch. And it was Ryan Baird who really started to come into that game in that period of time. And when he got on front foot, we as a team got on front foot. It was quite, he's hopefully gets a bit of confidence from his time at Trinity. and he gets, because he really is a guy when he makes a line break, he gets us on the front foot. He's got that. So it was interesting, our better attacks and our better sustained attacks when he actually got a bit of ball. So maybe Leinster should get the balls from him a bit more. But yeah, it was sort of one to the blind and one back into, Baird threw it back inside, they call it the open side, where Osborne sort of scooted through, nice little spin tackle. Poor Antonio ended on the deck like a spinning top. I'm going to use the old, he's like that little spinning top in the Squid Games. That's my pop culture reference for the day. But yeah, he ended up on his butt. And in fairness to Joe Mack, he had run a nice trail line. You wouldn't think it was going to be the blindside lock inside Jamie, and it looked like an easy dot down. But yeah, it was just, it was a nice manipulation of defense. It's, as I said, it's like 11 move where you go normally go open and go blind, but Gibson Park did the reverse of it, and it's things like that really manipulates defense. And it looks like La Rochelle's defense isn't great there. You go, oh, they just sort of opened up, but it's you'd look at the manipulation of what Leinster's done there, and they've isolated the big tight head, and because he's coming in off the line out, and that's just knowing where La Rochelle players are standing in the line out and where the gap possibly might be when you go back to the blind, and who you're going to line up against Antonio. So really, really detailed work, and that would have looked at La Rochelle's line out setup. They would have looked at, to try and pick it up. And that's the detail these teams have to go at to sort of get one over each other. I mean, that's the level we're talking about. And it was a great try, and it made it 6-10. That was the last scored a half. Only a couple of other points to make before the end. We're rabbiting on too much because there was a lot in that half. Well, obviously, La Rochelle lost their two props. Antonio had gone off, maybe from concussion from spinning around so much after that break, and then Wardy went off shortly after that. Um, we really had we had possibly chances to pull away to make it 17-6. And I suppose this is the one area Leinster might have been disappointed in the whole game. We really had a lot of pressure on La Rochelle in that last sort of 5-6 minutes of the half. They were really, as I said, our blitz inside their 22, really making their exits difficult. Leinster will probably look back in this game going, we need to pressurise La Rochelle more inside their 22 because their exits struggled a bit under pressure, and we had sustained pressure. There was we knocked on from a maul, or the maul was fairly messy off a line out after La Rochelle infringed. We had a 5 meter line out, and it just was a bit messy. And there was other couple of chances in there within inside the La Rochelle 22 that I think on another day with a little bit more detail, a little more sort of exact around some certain plays that Leinster would have got in again, and I think that would have left La Rochelle really rattled at that stage. They would have thought, look how much pressure we've had in the 22, and Leinster have just become a little bit more clinical inside the 22. Yeah, so probably disappointed. We could have, that was one period of the game. People look back and go, oh, Leinster were hanging on. But, those periods of the game in that first half where we could have went more than 2 scores ahead. But yeah, just the last 15 seconds, I'd say absolutely ferocious sort of test level rugby. This is what the Heineken Cup is all about. Two of the best 3 or 4 teams in the competition, absolutely going at each other. And all I'd say if somebody wants to look back at the game is, it's not just crash bang, great defense. There's a lot of good stuff going on both sides about targeting, about how to defend, and it's not all just South African bravery and guts, as I said. There's just really good detail about how Leinster were defending, and who they were going after, who they were double teaming, who they were getting the single runners, and it looks easy, but there was a plan there. A lot of credit to Ian Barr and the players. And yeah, to get 10-6 in at halftime was outstanding.
Absolutely. I mean, the game really lived up to its billing from the start. I mean, what I forgot to mention before you began was the amount of changes in Leinster's lineup. When they announced it on the Friday, we immediately got an email that there was a change. There was Tommy O'Brien, and then Tommy O'Brien, who literally has no luck at all. He pulled something in the captain's run. Then they had to make even more changes as well. And I think they were intending to rest Frawley this week. We'll see how next week's team goes. But then Frawley ended up on the bench, and they had to move everyone around Jimmy O'Brien to a different wing. So there were changes. There were changes even before having practiced all week with a certain backline. There was changes even before the kickoff. But like you say, ironically, when we went for the 5-3 split on the bench, we had more changes in our backline throughout the match than they did, and it would have hurt them more had they had them. But anyway, listen, talking about the defense, I mean, the only thing I can add to that is that you have teams preparing to play Leinster, and they're looking at our defense, and a lot of good defensive systems, they tend to base around maybe one thing. You got someone like Tommy Rochelle, who's a good poacher, so you try to set it up so that he can pick the right breakdown to go into. We've got about 4 or 5 different ways that we're going to get the ball off you. If it's either just wearing you down, pushing you back 10, 20 meters, forcing a mistake that way, or forcing you just to give it back to us. You got Caelan Doris coming in, just basically stripping it. Say, here, I'll take that. Thanks for and we did choke tackles as well, and like the whole team gets involved in those. I think Gibson Park was involved in one at one stage. It's very difficult to plan to set up because we're kind of creating that chaos, but we're still able to target. And of course, don't forget the old Ringrose train coming at you as well. There's all sorts of different ways, so it's an amazing system. You had the Porter protocol as well as I'm calling it. You had Cian Healy playing, going all at it with those tackles, and it was you could see him really going for it. in those, well, they were all going for it, but with La Rochelle pressing in those early stages, the crucial stage where you don't want to let it in the try. And I think that they were set up to build that early lead, and we were really going for it. And then Porter just comes on after 20 minutes. It's a great idea. It's amazing. It's amazing it hasn't been tried before. But and then you say that line out at the end was frustrating, and I know we know how the game turned out. It was frustrating watching it back a second time. I think Joe went up for the ball, he came down, and the guys had already formed in him. He went down and actually it whacked off their backs. Yeah, and just sort of bounced out. That was a key moment. We had an opportunity to press home, and we just get the line out right. In those situations, we're almost not guaranteed to score, but my God, that's what did you make of it, Keno?
Yeah. I mean, I think Tom's done a wonderful job of summarizing it there. Kind of tail of the tape really matches what Tom was saying, kind of what we saw on the screen. La Rochelle had 57% possession and 54 carries versus our 39. But the meters made were actually pretty similar. It was 202 for La Rochelle versus 193 for Leinster, which I think kind of goes some way to going into Leinster's just massive defence. It was 67 tackles in that half compared to La Rochelle. But given how many opportunities they had in the 22 and they came away with nothing, to then go down half an hour into the game and first entry to the 22 score a try was absolutely brilliant. And honestly, probably that sets up the winning of the game. If you don't do that, then even if you manage to kick ahead just for the half, without that try, it makes it very, very, very difficult. Set piece, unfortunately, again, kind of reared its head as an issue. 85% line-out success kind of doesn't tell the story of the messiness that was there in and around the line-out, even when we were securing ball. A 66 scrum success as well wasn't great, as they were La Rochelle were 100% on both. That didn't last into the second half, thankfully, on both. Discipline-wise, Leinster 7 penalties to La Rochelle's 4. Now that kind of gets turned on its head a bit in the second half as well, thankfully. But does seem to be that is definitely the new policy for Leinster is to not be too worried. Take the 50-50, take the risky shot at the turnover, or just even making a mess of their ruck, slowing it down considerably, rather than take the line break. Across the main competitions now, I think it's about 80% of points are scored off of tries rather than kicks of any kind, which is something else. It really is. It's gone up by about 20% over the last 10-15 years. So there's a huge emphasis on it. I think it goes kind of I chatted with someone about this recently. I did a bit of crunching on it. I think it goes partially with the fact that you're likely to get roughly the same average amount of points, say, out of kicking to the corner with a 1/3 success rate as you will kicking for the posts with an 80% success rate. But if you kick for the corner, it gets you that bit closer to an extra log point, which is invaluable. So you're as well going for the one that has the bonus potential down the line if you get the 4, especially when you're a team like Leinster who can get it done in the 22, especially against teams that are a bit more physically able.
Well, listen, in one way, I say we're disappointed we didn't get the try before the end, but I say if we were told in the first half we'd have a 4-point lead, we'd get the game's only try so far, and also La Rochelle's 2 starting props were gone off the pitch. It wasn't a bad situation to be in at halftime, and the score was La Rochelle 6, Leinster 10. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the rugby sphere, like our YouTube channel, where we post extra clips, including a look at the different permutations in the pools ahead of the final round of matches. To get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky this weather, so do follow us there if you can, and please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so with La Rochelle's Ultan Delan now on for Thomas Revolt, it was Sam Prendergast kicking off the second half for Leinster, Keno.
From the opening kick exchanges, Doolan knocked on under pressure from Geordie Barrett, chasing his own Gary Owen. It was a nice way to start the half, I have to say. Gave Leinster an early scrum just outside La Rochelle's 22. Got a good push on it as well. I think we're starting to hoping to see the benefit of having their starter props off the pitch within this half. And it might have been worth going for the penalty at that point, kind of secure a picture in the ref's mind. I'll actually say now, I thought Amish Kelly had a really good game, all in all. He is a very good ref. He paid a lot of attention to the scrum. It didn't feel like it was just a lottery, which they often do. I kind of use the scrum as it's a good acid test for referees. If it's going 50-50, just going to spin the wheel, you know what you're dealing with. But he really was examining it and wasn't just making calls on kind of on the first thing he saw. He did seem to try to get to the basis of it. So I would have been happier if we'd actually gone for the penalty at that point. But anyway, we didn't. A few faces on, unfortunately, in their 22. There's very little go forward. Open play attack still pretty disjointed. And unfortunately, it's an unforced knock on then from us. A couple of minutes later, Hastoy milks a penalty for offside by throwing into a retreating player. It's classic top 14 scrum half behaviour. You know, you do it when it's there. Some refs can be a bit hard on it if they think you're just doing it on purpose. To be honest, that pass wasn't going to anyone, so I would have been possibly a little bit slower to give a penalty. But that's why I'm not there with the whistle in the middle of the pitch. Line out in our 22 to a maul, but lovely bit of maul defence. We splinter it and wrap up the carrier. So again, dealing with whatever was coming our way at that point. Unfortunately, La Rochelle didn't enjoy us stopping that rolling maul, and Kalam decides to make his feelings known by tearing Dars's headgear off. Absolutely daft penalty to give away. Like, how you need to do what Ronan tells you to do rather than what he maybe would react to a referee like on the pitch or say from the side of the pitch. You can't be doing that sort of stuff. So
it's the exact opposite of a face mask in the NFL. I mean, that can do you some serious damage, but just ripping the guy's scrum cap off and throwing it away. Hello.
I know, it's a bit primary school.
Does that?
Yeah. Yeah, and still give away a penalty for it.
Yeah.
So went on a couple of exchanges. We were finding it hard to get to the edge in open play. Like their defense was actually certainly in the second half. I think it had improved over the first half. They were pretty solid, and they were coming up fast, folding when they needed to, making good decisions, and really making it tough for us to get around them. I think Rog must have really given them both barrels, to be honest, at halftime. Give away another penalty for an off the ball tackle, and Prendergast gets a lovely 50-meter spiral out of it. This is the time to do the spiral, Sam. When there's no one charging you down, when there's no one in your face, and it's lovely when he executes that, given the time and space. Unfortunately, it was a dirty line out, and then on the other side of the pitch, Barrett tried to drop the ball off to Osborne, who misread it and overran it, and La Rochelle got a turnover from holding up a Ringrose. But on replay, there was a knee to the ground. Ringrose had gotten the knee to the ground. It was actually pretty solidly there. It wasn't a couple of frames either. Fortunately missed, so they get a penalty off of that. These are the way it goes. James Gibson Park as well. Scrag Alders off the back of their scrum. I'm liking the physicality Gibson Park is bringing this season. I don't know what it is. I think shaving his head has brought out his inner Jason Statham. He just seems to have upped the hard man game a little bit, and I'm all absolutely here for it. Kona rips it, but it's called back for a Leinster knock on. At this stage, Leinster absolutely tear through their scrum, which against the head, which that's one of my favourite things in the world. That and a good ball defence now. I could watch 80 minutes of the two of those. Unfortunately, nothing from the phases again, but we earn a penalty and off of that scrum, and Prendergast nails it, so 13-6. So we're the score ahead at that point. A bit more back and forth, knock-on scrum to Leinster, reset once, and at this stage, I think it becomes clear La Rochelle are willing to throw freeze. They did one just before the end of the first half as well. They wanted to throw free in the scrum to avoid any chance of giving away 2 penalties in a row.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to solidify that picture in the referee's head. And you know what? Yeah, absolutely. We can't go for another scrum anymore. So that's, yeah, it's gamesmanship, whatever. But like you gotta find the edge where you can. Absolutely, fair play to them. It was well managed. There's just so much to this half. Van der Fire gets a intercept from a lovely, just kind of getting into a tight passing lane, gets an intercept. But unfortunately, it's more slightly aimless and open, messy play in their 22 phases in their 22. It was certainly, yeah, I think actually for the whole half, really, we didn't see much incisiveness from our open play attack. And I know it's probably a result of having focused more on the defense recently, but it's something that we're really going to have to tighten up if we want to go far in the competition. Like it worked well enough defense only, really, for this match, but it's not gonna see you all the way through the knockouts, and so that's a concern. Though the line out's probably more of a concern. La Rochelle and Fringe at a loose ball. Prendergast puts it over. So 16-6 when we hit 2 scores. And yeah, absolutely key there. Next, a fairly harsh scrum call for me. Leinster popping up in the scrum. I did think they were up first. This Hastoy's penalty attempt. This is his first time to hit the post in the game. I can't remember the last time I saw a game where someone hits the post twice in one game. But and then the mess. Like Leinster are absolutely going to be running what to do if the ball hits the post. The problem is setting that up in training. So yeah, a scrum, plenty of phases in there, plenty of phases for them in our 22, but the defense really holding solid, as it did throughout the half. Like outstanding defense, and there really no way through. Hastoy gets another penalty. They get another penalty. Hastoy converts it. So 16-9 at that point. Again, a bit more back and forth, and we get to the point where Ringrose puts an absolutely massive melter of a hit on Hastoy, which it's a bit of the turning. I think it's the kind of the turning of the game, because he's not right after that. He's absolutely not right after that. I think he kicks 2 out on the full thereafter, hits another one off the post. Immediately after, he does do that beautiful crossfield kick for Dylan Leeds to actually go in for a score. He
wasn't keen on a second drop goal attempt either, I thought.
No, they weren't actually setting up for that at all. I was wondering why, and then I remembered the hit. I was like, oh yeah, that's why. He was obviously suffering badly, but he did very well for that Dylan Leeds score.
That was on the money, yeah.
And I thought, Leeds is very smart as well after the dink to leave his hands off the ball until it across the line. Just to make sure that was a sweet. I just want to take the opportunity. That was a sweet try. Absolutely, it really was.
That's one of the best, one of the competition best, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely. But it just shows what level of execution they needed to hit to score against the defense that was there on the day. Because
and how long it took them. And how long it took them to do it. I mean, that's been happening.
Absolutely.
Like when we have conceded tries this season, but it just takes teams so long to finally get it, and then but then they have to still go and try to get another one. Then.
So yeah, a bit more back and forth. Another penalty for another off the ball tackle. There was a few of them actually in the half. Probably not enough to accumulate a serious warning. But. I think, the referee probably judged that about right. It was even enough. Ross Byrne misses that one, unfortunately, which was very disappointing for all that Ross Byrne's been criticised about. He's a good kicker, and he has produced big kicks in big games for us before. That was a sitter.
Yeah,
that was not a difficult kick. And with 2 points in it, really, really, really needed to execute that. So that was really disappointing. But however, 2 points it is, and an absolute nail biter of a finish then into the last 10 minutes. All back and forth, helter skelter. Hastoy kicks 2 out in the full now in that kind of 5 minute period. I would have gone through all of this play by play, but it would have taken me half an hour to talk
Jesus.
through it all. 10 minutes of rugby. We earn a penalty attempt quite far out. Barrett tries it, but wasn't able to make that either. Those 2 kicks go over. It's game over.
Oh yeah, even one. I think
even one would have made things difficult. I mean, you're talking 2 to 5 there, so a converted try would have done. But 2 kicks, that would have absolutely finished it off. It's a shame, but sure, got the nail biter anyway, and the result as it turned out. La Rochelle, they were keeping possession deep in our half, mauls, turnovers, near poaches. It did swap around a couple of times, but Leinster absolutely kept them out at every turn. Everyone showing up in the defensive line. Luke McGrath showing up, I think, about 3 times in a minute at one point. Absolute sterling level stuff. I was really it was
amen.
You could not write a better defensive set script than what was going on the pitch in that 5-minute period. Absolutely 100% stuff. A penalty for La Rochelle in their own half, kicked by Hastoy, comes off the post again. But they managed to earn a scrum in our 22 off it. And this is the closer then at 80 minutes. Absolutely chaos. Phase after phase. They go for the drop kick fairly quick after the scrum. Van der Fleer, who's at the ruck, there wasn't much distance from the ruck. They probably should have had him further back. He might have doubted his distance with the injury he was carrying after that bad tackle. And Van der Fleer really blocks it properly. It wasn't fingertip stuff either. He absolutely smacks it with 2 hands. Phase after phase then of clean defense from us, and they're just shuffling it. It is 1-out runners. They're not really doing anything very special with it. They're just trying to go forward. But they're actually going back. It's really good, clean offensive defense. Again, picking and choosing who to do the double tackles on, who to do the single tackles on. Eventually we gave them enough rope, and there's a forward pass from La Rochelle unforced, and that was the end of the half. And a sigh of relief all around.
Stuff. I mean, it was just the way we had done so well anyway, and then it hits off the post, and we recover. He didn't have time to boot it. My first instinct was boot that thing, just get it out of there. He didn't have time. He ran. He had players in his face straight away, so he had to set it up. So La Rochelle wanted the scrum, and then there was the wait for the scrum, and then there was the clock had literally just gone red. When the first phase, Aldred took it from the base, first phase to Hastoy, and that was the moment. Josh gets back and blocks that one. But then, of course, there's no chance that could go to a Leinster player. Oh, no, that would be too simple. 20 phases, then I counted after that. And then just a side point, where the phase counter's gone, man? It's just a simple graphic. Just stick that up on the screen. I had to use my fingers. Watching it the second time to try to count them, and still I think I probably missed a few. But it was, I mean, there was like you need to bring a shotgun on the pitch to give away a penalty. I think in that situation, I don't think there was probably us crossing a few lines. There was probably them crossing a few lines and clearing out. It was one of those classic situations but that was a forward pass. It was literally right in front of them on the 20th phase. We kept them. We behaved like the 22 was the try line. It was amazing. It was amazing defense and keeping the push back. And like I said, I thought that there were a couple of phases there where I said, Hastoy's got to drop in the pocket here, and it just wasn't happening. They were always trying to set it up, and I think again it's another situation of our defense. It's not always what we do. It's just the knowledge of our defense which forces the other team into making bad decisions, and it was just. But not good for the heart, like we said. What did you make of it all, Tom?
Yeah, I think Keno summed it up perfectly. Yeah, look, it was finishing off in the first half, that 10 minutes before half time, where I felt we could have just edged along. It was the same again from the restart, from the first 10 minutes of the second half. I thought, we kicked a couple of penalties in that period and stretched it out to 16-6. I thought when we were the more dominant team, we were putting scores on the board and maybe should have put more on. That could have been a 23-6. It's, quite easily, and people might say, look, sure, Leinster defended for their lives against La Rochelle, and that sort of 15 minutes to 30-minute period of the first half. But as I said, it was that was very good defense and some poor attack by La Rochelle. You know what I mean? It's not all like, oh, you're hanging on, you're hanging on. It's too simple to say you're hanging on. There's a lot more going on there than just, well, you're hanging on and you're within 5-10 meters. I thought when we upped the pace inside their 22, we caused them more problems than they did. They funny enough, they tend to slow it down inside our 22. It's just an interesting tactic aside, and I don't think it obviously didn't give fruition because, as Keno beautifully described, that try that they end up getting, it really had to go like literally to the edge. Lades was, we would have been in row C. He was that far out, and it was a beautiful bit of skill. Not a whole lot Frawley could do because he was trying to scramble across, and very clever by Lades to get that try. But yeah, the two missed kicks was, especially Ross's one, was a bit of a kick in the stone, so to speak. I mean, if I'm not sure if Tommy O'Brien had got injured earlier, for want of a better word, whether he would have went with Ross and Frawley on the bench. I don't know what sort of 23rd, 24th, 25th man had travelled over with the team. But we lost a little bit of momentum with the substitutions to a degree. Again, having to swap around so many players. So that momentum we had in the first sort of 15 minutes of the half, even though we're just chipping away at the scoreboard, in opposite to what we were saying about taking trees and not taking trees, we had that sort of dominance, but we lost again a bit of our way with the reshuffle. So I think if the coaches could rewind the clock, they would have a slightly different makeup on the bench than they could. But obviously, look, they were adapting on the day when Tommy pulled out so late on the captain's run. But yeah, look, the last thing I'll say is, it's funny. I found a quote. I was listening to another podcast, and it says, "Attacking shape was all over the place. So many mistakes, handling errors, sloppy and careless. They lacked shape. Couldn't do an awful lot with the ball. Individuals made poor reads. Skill execution was quite poor. They hung in for dear life, and it took a block down to win the game." Now, that, believe it or not, is are the biased Dublin media, Irish Times. That was their review, one of their on their pod, talking about Leinster. I'm thinking, I was listening to it coming back from Wicklow today, and I was going, do these lads forget what it's like to win in the south of France, or southwest again, to be pedantic? Winning down in the south of France, I said there's only two teams in Europe that would have won that game the weekend, and including the South African teams in that. It's ourselves and Toulouse. Like, it's sort of Leinster are being judged on the last three finals, and maybe rightly so. And they'll accuse us of having blue tinted glasses on here, and maybe that's fair too. But you have to look at the game for what it is on the day, the 80 minutes, rather than the prism of what's going to happen next May on a neutral ground in Cardiff. So to go to south of France against a really good team. And again, people saying, oh, Dante was missing. Skelton obviously is a bit of an albatross for us. We get that. But we have RG and we have, but Dante, people saying Dante's missing, but Dante hasn't been playing well for a year, and people are, it's not the same Dante that was in Marseille 2 or 3 years ago. So, there's a distinct lack of, in the now, what's happening rather than, what's realistic. So, yeah, even Leinster fans, the sort of broken up into two cohorts, as we mentioned ourselves, is like, wow, this is so glass half empty, and some, like ourselves, a little bit more old heads who've seen what it's like to go to south of France.
Listen, listen, it was nail biter right to the end, but we got there. The final score, like we said, was La Rochelle 14, Leinster 16.
Elsewhere in the rugby world, Munster kept Saracens tryless in a 17-12 win at Thomond Park to stay in knockout contention, while Ulster's 38-10 defeat at Leicester Tigers leaves them likely to only have Challenge Cup knockout rugby to play for next week. In that same Challenge Cup, Connacht recovered from their seasonal interpro disappointments to put away Lyon, making it 3 wins from 3 and top of the seeding as things stand. Back in the Champions Cup, Leinster's Pool 2 opponents had wins. There was wins for Bath over Claremont and also for Bristol over Benetton. We'll be going over the state of the pools and all of the final round permutations in our bonus chat video on our YouTube page. Meanwhile, in the fourth round of the Women's Celtic Challenge competition, there were 2 more convincing wins for the Irish sides, with Covers overcoming the leaders going into the round Edinburgh, while Wolfhounds put themselves on top of the table with a 48-point whitewash at Brighton Thunder. Going back to our feature match from Sunday, after the game, skipper Caelan Doris had this to say, quote, We know what they're capable of. You've got to front up physically if you want to win here. And I thought we did that very well indeed, end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, John Hyland said this on our Facebook page, quote, Bottia was a nuisance when he came on. Leinster were very physical and really ripped into them in the first half. Maybe lost a bit of intensity after the substitutions. Both sides need to improve their place kicking, end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? And so this now brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Tom.
Yeah, look, similar to what I said earlier on, just absolutely fantastic win. Without going back on reliving some of the match, the only point I'll make, there'd be lots, as there has been lots of griping about budgets and new central contracts and Geordie Barrett and RG Snyman. At the end of the day, getting a win like this and getting a last 16 game at home with potential, let's hopefully the Bath game goes well and possible home quarter final and obviously the semi final, even though could be in Dublin, is sort of a neutral thing. But that's massive finances back into some of those maybe move to Croke Park. We don't know, depending on the opposition. That option is there. And I think now Leinster have 26 knockout games or something like that in both competitions over the in Leo's time. And Leinster fans tend to turn up for these games, and there's obviously got a good price tickets, and there's premium tickets, and for all the griping about gaps between provinces, if you're continuously getting knockout games, the gap will widen. You know what I mean? Munster have to go to Northampton next week, and try and get a win and to try and secure a bumper crowd in Thomond in the last 16, and they all add up. If you're continuously away in these games or away in knockouts, it's finances. And I don't want to be talking about money about on a weekend, but one equals the other. If you're not getting those sort of games, you're not getting your Geordie Barrett's coming to Leinster. You're not able to get RG or Slimani. There's for all the griping, but that's there's it all adds up. But yeah, look, I just any win in the south of France is fantastic, and Leo Cullen's pool record games now since his first season is just ridiculous. I've probably lost track of it. I know it's something like 53 or 54 and 57 games. It's just ridiculous sort of standard. And it's our 12th win in a row this season. So just keep chugging along. And lots to improve. Yeah, line out's still going wrong. Scrum can be a bit iffy, but we're still 12 from 12. So I'll take that and a good, hard, aggressive rugby, but smart. Look beyond the simple explanation of, oh wow, that's really, really tough going, tough defense. There's a lot of smart stuff going on there, and yeah, delighted with the win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were saying in our preview how we had all those wins going into this game, but this was all due respect to all those teams, but this was the first really big, the really tough one that's going to be from start to finish. Not easy to do.
Not Limerick, no, not Limerick.
Well, I mean that helped us prepare for this. You know what I mean? Kino, for your final thoughts.
Yeah, that was a win that came down to composed game management and defense for Leinster. Like there's no other way to put it. But the thing is, you can't have composed game management and defense without the players fronting up, and they absolutely did in that. I'll give you a tail of the tape to prove my point. Top tackler for La Rochelle was Budahunt with 11 tackles. Now, not bad at all. Above him in the Leinster charts were Kelleher had 14 tackles, Gibson Park had 14 tackles, a number of them in Aldreet coming roaring off the back of the scrum. Van der Fleer had 17 tackles, and Doris had 27 tackles.
Jeez.
27. Tommy Beauvoice. Honestly, 27 tackles is insane. And he was everywhere. He was not only with the tackles, but with the rips. He had 12 carries, made 45 meters. The man's unplayable. And he's just so reliable with it as well. He is absolutely elite, world class, whatever way you want to put it. He's again still one of the top 3 back rows in the world again. He doesn't show any sign of slowing down at all, and it's long may it last. Other than that as well, I thought Prendergast did well. He's still a young fella. He's still learning his trade. He's learned a couple of things from this, and we still came out the winning side of the match. And he made his kicks. He did what needed to be done. Very much job done for him. He's a very impressive young man. I think La Rochelle. I think Rog will be happy with some aspects and very unhappy with some other aspects. Like their handling was sloppy. For the accusations that are being slung against Leinster in some of the other pods, their handling was sloppy. Yeah. They made mistakes all over the place. Like they, on paper.
Are you suggesting some people are biased against what Leinster do? Nah, not at all.
I mean, on paper, with a 7-1 split, and they've got a number of very sizable forwards, even with the couple of injuries that they're carrying. Lest I add that we're carrying a couple of our own still as well. But in any ways, and the misconversion that was the difference in points in the end. The 2 off the post, like they had opportunities and they fluffed them. And if you're going to be a winning team, you need to nail the big match winning moments, and they failed to do so on the day. And I think Rog will be quietly fuming about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we one of the reasons we got Ian Eber, what did he do just before he came to us? Won 3 knockout games in a World Cup by 1 point. And this was exactly the kind of result. And you can, like I said on Blue Sky during the game, his fingerprints were all over this performance. And we got there in the end for sure.
That's it. That was our problem. Not being able to win the big games when it mattered, when it came down to it, the really tough match winning moments. And we had a number of them in that game. And that's what gives me an awful lot of hope for the rest of the season is, it's great when you win 40 points, running in tries every 3 seconds. Fantastic and all. But it's the really, really tough, ground out, not perfect matches where you do the things that really matter to get you over the line. That's what'll win you silverware.
Well, that's brilliant, lads. So many thanks again. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks again to Tom and Keno for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, Chef.
Cheers, Chef.
As for our next batch of Harpin, we'll have our 80+ column posting on Wednesday. Then we'll be turning our attention to the visit of Bath to the Aviva Stadium next weekend. So please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.